The kitchen smelled like dish soap and old coffee, a tired mix that always meant home. The grandfather clock in the hall clicked like a metronome, calm and cruel. I set my wedding binder on the counter, open to the timeline I'd polished for weeks. Vows at 2, 10 p.m. Photos at 2:45. Reception at 5 sharp. Father-daughter dance cued right after the toast. I was here for a signature. A nod, a hug, not a knife. My father refused to walk me down the aisle because sister was uncomfortable. That's the headline you'd pitch if this were a tabloid. But it wasn't a tabloid. It was Tuesday. It was my kitchen. It was my father. Your sister Olivia is uncomfortable with all the attention you're getting, Dad said, eyes on the table, thumb worrying the chipped edge. Not looking at me the way people confess to the floor. So I've been thinking, I don't think I should walk you down the aisle. Silence. Not the fun, dramatic kind, just the ugly kind that packs your ears with cotton and panic. The clock kept ticking. Somewhere outside, a dog barked like it didn't know the world had just tilted. What are you saying? Dad. My voice came out even like I'd rehearsed it. I hadn't. My stomach already knew. Olivia's been really upset, he continued, eyes moving from the table to the window to the clock to anywhere that wasn't my face. She says this wedding's a lot, and it's making her uncomfortable. I don't want to make things harder for her. For her. I let the words sit on my tongue, bitter. Metallic. It's my wedding day. I know, he cleared his throat, but you know how she is. Entitled. Dramatic. Addicted to being the sun. I shot back. Yes, I know. Charlotte, he warned. The old parental bark he used to use on the dog and me interchangeably. That's not fair. What's not fair is you choosing her feelings over mine. Again, like it's muscle memory. I closed the binder, 2 weeks before my wedding. You're backing out of walking me down the aisle so Olivia can breathe easier. He winced at backing out. Like the phrasing offended him more than the act. Look, I'm trying to keep peace. Peace? I laughed. It sounded wrong in my mouth. No, you're feeding a habit you created. You hand her the oxygen mask first, and I'm supposed to clap from the aisle. Don't be dramatic. I looked at him. Donald Hamilton, 60-ish, shoulders sloped, hands calloused from decades at the textile plant. The smell of machine oil permanently baked into his jackets. He could lift a bolt of fabric one-handed, but he couldn't lift his eyes to meet mine. I'm not being dramatic, I said softly. I'm being awake. He shook his head, like he could shake the conversation right off the table. You've always been independent. You don't need this tradition. I don't need it, I said. I wanted it. With you? The calm in my voice felt borrowed. I penciled your name into the program. I picked a path down the center because you said your knee still bothered you on stairs. I timed the music to your stride. He blinked. Something pinched at the corners of his mouth. Then the softness was gone. Olivia isn't built like you. Char. She's sensitive. She feels things bigger. Yeah, I said. Mostly about herself. That's your sister, he said, as if I'd just insulted a national monument. That's my sister. I agreed. And you're my father. Supposedly. He flinched at that one. I'm doing my best. No, I said. You're doing what's easiest. The clock ticked 3 times. His chair creaked when he finally stood. He paced to the sink, then back, like a caged thing. I'm not the bad guy here. Who is then? I asked. Me, the bride. Don't twist this. Don't hand me a pretzel. He scrubbed his face with both hands. I need to support Olivia right now. And as my father, I asked, do you need to support me? He didn't answer. That was the whole thing about my dad. He didn't answer. Not really. He paid bills and stood in photos and fixed leaky sinks and showed up when someone reminded him twice. He did enough. He did bare minimum. He did present. He didn't do father. I felt something crack. The way ice cracks on a pond and you realize the surface was thinner than you wanted to believe. My vision narrowed until all I could see was my own reflection in the black microwave door, hair up in a messy bun. Work blouse wrinkled from hours, a ring that still felt new on my finger, and a face trying to stay steady while a lifetime of second place lined up behind it. Thanks for showing me who really matters to you, I said. Not a shout. A statement? Don't make it like that, he snapped, finally looking at me. His eyes were tired. Defensive? This isn't personal. It's literally personal. You know Olivia's been struggling, he said. Breakup? Job stuff. She feels like you're overshadowing. I made a small, unbelieving sound. My wedding is overshadowing her? That's the point of a wedding. Don't be cruel. Honest. I corrected. He sank back into his chair, deflating. I don't want a scene at the church. There won't be, I said. Not the one you're worried about. What does that mean? It means I'm not begging. The plan, if you can call something that obvious a plan, walked into my head and sat down. It was already wearing a suit. It already smelled like Old Spice and library dust. It braided hair. It read bedtime stories in a voice that turned thunderstorms into background music. It clapped the loudest at middle school plays, brought a homemade cake to my first job, picked me up from college when my car died, never once asked if my success made anyone else uncomfortable. It was my grandfather, Theodore Hamilton, the man who had done the job, the man who never needed the title. I opened my phone, thumb hovering over Grandpa. My pulse slowed. I could hear his voice already. Come in. Sweetheart, what's on your mind? Dad watched me, suspicion creeping in. Charlotte, don't do anything rash. Rash would be sobbing and begging you to reconsider. I slid the binder into my tote. I'm done begging. You're going to regret this, he said. The classic threat of people who regret everything and learn nothing. No, I said. You really want to humiliate your own father? He gestured at himself. Incredulous. Like his body should be enough to win the argument. I want to honor the man who raised me. I stepped toward the hall. He stepped in front of me. I'm your father, he said, forcing each word like he was staking a claim on a piece of land he hadn't tended in years. It's my right. Rights are earned, I said, brushing past him. Grandpa earned it every day for 20 years. He grabbed my arm, not hard, but enough to stop me. Don't do this, he said, and for a flicker of a second I saw fear there, not anger. Not for me, for himself, for the first time. He was imagining the church without his role, imagining cameras pointed at a story where he wasn't the hero or even the supporting cast. A spectator. Third row. Let go, I said. He did. I walked down the hallway I'd raced down as a kid. The carpet runner soft and familiar. The frames on the wall a museum of obligatory smiles. Our family looked happy in those frames. We always did for 2 seconds at a time. I knocked on Theodore's door. Come in, sweetheart, came the immediate reply. Warm and bright. I opened it and there he was. 82 and stubborn, legs weaker than they used to be, mind sharp as a tack. He was in his chair, reading Churchill again, glasses halfway down his nose, sunlight striping the page. Grandpa, I said, and my voice almost broke on the second syllable. I need to ask you something important. Of course, he said, closing the book without a bookmark, because he always remembered where he left off. What's on your mind? Would you walk me down the aisle? No build-up, no speech, just the truth. His eyebrows lifted. What about your father? He decided Olivia's comfort matters more than my wedding, I said, and I didn't flinch at hearing it out loud. It sounded like it should. Absurd. So he's out. A pause. A flash of anger in eyes that usually only held weather reports and crossword clues. That boy, he muttered. And I felt 8 years old again, safe behind an adult who would say the thing and then fix the thing. You were there for everything that mattered, I said. You taught me to drive. You quizzed me for sets. You brought cake when I got the Sundale job. You were there. Will you do me the honor? He took my hands. His were cool. Steady. Charlotte, he said. And his voice did the thing I needed my father's voice to do 20 years ago. It would be the greatest honor of my life. Relief crashed over me so hard I had to sit on the ottoman. I laughed and cried at once. Messy and human. He squeezed my fingers. Your grandmother would be so proud, he said. So am I. Footsteps in the hall. Dad filled the doorway. Eyes sweeping the scene. Realization dawning like bad weather. What's going on? Grandpa is walking me down the aisle. I said, still holding Theodore's hands. Dad's mouth opened. Closed. He looked from Theodore to me, then back. The thundercloud in his expression cracked, leaking something like panic. Charlotte, don't make a mistake you can't undo. I'm fixing one, I said. The clock down the hall ticked twice. Like a judge's gavel, the scene was set. The cast was locked. The music was picked. All that was left was the walk. Thank you. I told Theodore, and I meant for the binder I wouldn't have to rewrite and for the childhood he already had. I stood. We'll practice, he said, smiling. Can't let you drag an old man down the aisle. You could never drag me, I said. Behind us, Dad exhaled a shaky, angry sound. But I didn't turn, not this time. I'd spent years turning toward him. The rest of this story, I would walk forward. The days after that kitchen war played like reruns in my head. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his words again. Olivia is uncomfortable with all the attention you're getting, as if my wedding was a crime scene. And my sister was the victim. The absurdity burned hotter every time. But memories started bleeding in, old reels from my childhood. Dad sitting in his recliner, grease still on his hands from the factory, eyes glazed over at the TV, present but absent, breathing the same air but miles away. His contribution was paying the bills and scolding when I asked for too much. Olivia, 5 years younger, was born into his full attention. She cried, she got new toys. She pouted. Vacation plans changed. She asked for his time, he dropped everything. I asked for the same, maybe later. Char, I'm tired. Later never came. Theodore, my grandfather, was the one who filled the silence. He moved in after Mom died when I was 8, and he never left. Not physically. Not emotionally. He made pancakes in funny shapes when I cried over math homework. He braided my hair before school when Dad couldn't be bothered. He clapped until his hands turned red at my middle school play, even though I had 2 lines and forgot one. It was always him. I remembered the night of my high school graduation. Dad almost didn't come. He showed up late, smelling like sweat and cigarettes, and forgot his camera. Theodore? He had been there 2 hours early, in the front row, wearing a pressed suit he couldn't afford. He cried harder than I did when I crossed the stage. He took me for ice cream after, strawberry for me, mint chocolate for him, and told me, "You are the best thing your mother left this world. Don't you forget it." Dad never said anything like that. Dad said, "Don't get cocky. College is harder." That was the divide. One man gave me lectures. The other gave me belief. And now, years later, it was like history had decided to write itself in permanent ink. Dad was out. Grandpa was in. The more I thought about it, the more poetic it became. Donald Hamilton, my biological father, would sit in the pews as a spectator at his own daughter's wedding. He'd watch another man, an older, wiser, better man, walk me down the aisle. He'd have to swallow the truth in front of every cousin, every aunt, every friend who'd ever whispered about his favoritism. There would be no hiding it. It wasn't just revenge. It was justice. Flashback. The Christmas when Olivia was 15 and I was 20. I had just gotten my first promotion. I was glowing, excited to tell the family. Dad barely looked up from carving the turkey. Olivia announced she got cast as a tree in the school play. He beamed like she'd landed a Hollywood deal. "That's my girl," he said. That night I cried in my room, and Theodore came in with hot cocoa. He said, "Some people can't see the stars because they're too busy staring at the fire. Don't let it dim you." That line carried me through more boardrooms and heartbreaks than I could count. I owed him. The binder on my desk still said Father of the Bride. Donald Hamilton. I stared at it that night and grabbed a pen. I crossed it out. Bold, deliberate. Underneath, I wrote Father of the Bride. Theodore Hamilton. The ink bled a little on the paper. It looked like a wound sealing shut. Donald didn't know it yet, but the ceremony would be his trial. Every guest would be the jury, and Theodore would deliver the verdict with each steady step down that aisle. I could already picture Olivia's face, tight, furious, fake smile plastered on as whispers circled the pews. She wanted less attention on me. But she'd engineered the opposite, a spotlight so bright it would expose every crack in our family for the world to see. And Dad, he'd finally feel what I'd felt my whole life, pushed aside, overlooked, unwanted. Except this time, it wouldn't be in the shadows of a living room. It would be under stained glass, in front of God, family, and a photographer with a very expensive lens. As I replayed it all, a calm settled in me. This wasn't cruelty. This was clarity. For the first time, I knew exactly what I had to do. And it wasn't about Olivia anymore. It wasn't even about Dad. It was about Theodore, the only man who had ever truly earned the title. And I would give him that honor, no matter who burned in the fallout. When I asked Grandpa, he didn't hesitate. His eyes filled with tears before I even finished the sentence. "Charlotte, it would be the honor of my life," he said, voice breaking in a way that stabbed me with both joy and sorrow. I hugged him so hard his glasses slipped sideways. For a moment, I was 8 years old again. burying my face in the only man who had ever shown up for me without conditions. But reality has a way of clawing back in. Donald found out fast. Maybe he heard me talking. Maybe he saw the binder with his name crossed out. Either way, he came at me like a storm. "Charlotte, this is ridiculous." He snapped over the phone 2 nights later. His voice was sharp. That factory floor bark he thought counted as authority. "I'm your father. It's my right to walk you down the aisle." "No," I said calmly. "It's a privilege. And you gave it up. You're punishing me for trying to keep peace." "Peace." I laughed. "You handed Olivia a grenade and called it peace." His strategy was predictable. First guilt. "After all I've done for you." I cut him off. "List it. Go ahead. Tell me one thing you did for me that wasn't bare minimum." Silence. He wasn't good with lists. Then came anger. "You ungrateful girl. Do you know how this will look? People will think I abandoned you. They'll think the truth." I shot back. "Which is worse?" Finally. "Bribery. I'll pay for the honeymoon," he offered. His voice desperate now. "Anywhere you want. Italy? Spain?" I almost laughed. "Italy, the place Grandpa and I used to dream about when I was little, tracing our fingers over maps, promising one day we'd go. Donald never even knew." "I don't need your money," I said, and hung up. But he wasn't the only one losing it. Olivia called next, venom in every syllable. "You're destroying this family." "Charlotte." "No," I said. "Dad destroyed it when he chose your comfort over my wedding." "You're selfish," she screamed. "You always think everything is about you." I let that hang a moment. The irony so thick it almost made me choke. "It's my wedding day." I finally said, "It is about me. For once." "You're vindictive?" She spat. "No," I corrected. "I'm honest. And I'm done pretending Dad's neglect is normal." She hung up, but not before throwing the last card. "You'll regret this. He's heartbroken." Maybe he was, but I wasn't. For once, I wasn't the one twisting myself into knots so Olivia could feel tall. Meanwhile, Grandpa was buzzing like a man half his age. He insisted on buying a new suit, navy blue, tailored, sharp. He practiced walking the aisle without his cane, leaning on a family heirloom walking stick instead. He even asked to visit the church ahead of time. "I want to make sure I can handle the steps," he told me, determination blazing in his 82-year-old eyes. Watching him filled something inside me that had been starving for years. He wanted to get it right, not for appearances. For me, and word spread. Aunts, cousins, family friends. They all knew Theodore had been the real father all along. Most of them weren't surprised by the switch. Some even whispered relief. "It's about time someone put Donald in his place," Aunt Patricia said over the phone. "Theodore raised you, not him." For once, the whispers weren't against me. They were for me. Donald, of course, kept calling, kept begging, kept raging. He cycled through emotions like a man drowning, grabbing anything, anyone, to keep from sinking. But the truth was, he had built his own weight. The wedding was 2 weeks away. The decision was made. The fallout had already begun, and I wasn't backing down. I wasn't punishing him. I was honoring the man who had already been my father for 20 years. The ceremony would make that truth impossible to ignore, and Donald would finally feel what it meant to be an afterthought. The morning of my wedding hit me like electricity. Clear skies over Charlotte, the kind of crisp October air that makes everything feel sharper, louder, more alive. I woke in my childhood bedroom, sunlight slicing through the blinds, heart pounding. It should have been nerves about vows, flowers, guests. But no, my stomach twisted for one reason only. The third-row seat my father would be forced to occupy. At 8 a.m., Grandpa knocked and shuffled in, holding a cup of coffee exactly how I like it, 2 sugars. Splash of cream. "Good morning, beautiful bride," he said. His voice cracked, eyes already gleaming. That man had been practicing this moment for weeks. By noon, we were at St. Michael's Church, a brick giant with stained glass windows glowing like jewels. The sanctuary smelled of polished wood and old hymnals, and the hush inside carried its own weight. I peeked out from the bridal room, catching sight of Donald's car parked crooked in the lot. He was here, sitting among the guests like a stranger. When I finally stepped into the vestibule, Theodore stood waiting in his new navy suit, heirloom walking stick in hand. He looked like royalty, shoulders back, chin up, eyes burning with pride. For a moment, the ache of losing Mom returned. Sharp and sudden, But then he smiled, and it was as if she'd sent him to stand here for both of them. The organ swelled. Bridesmaids filed in. Guests craned their necks. Whispers rippled through the pews. People already knew. They knew who was at my side. They knew who wasn't. "Ready, my dear?" Grandpa asked, offering his arm. "Ready, Grandpa?" I whispered. My voice didn't shake. The doors opened. Light poured in. And we walked. Gasps fluttered across the sanctuary. The photographer's flash popped. My husband-to-be, James, stood at the altar, eyes glistening. But my gaze snagged on the third row. Donald sat there, rigid, his face pale and slack. Olivia beside him, jaw clenched, cheeks flushed crimson. They looked like prisoners at their own trial. Each step felt like a gavel strike. Boom, boom, boom! Every whisper from the crowd was a verdict. She chose the man who earned it. Halfway down, I caught snippets. About time. Always favored Olivia. Look at Theodore. The tide had turned. What Donald thought would humiliate me was humiliating him instead. At the altar, Reverend Matthews smiled warmly, and his words cut through the silence like a blade. Charlotte Hamilton is being walked down the aisle today by her beloved grandfather, the father figure who raised her with unconditional love. There it was. Public. Permanent. Undeniable. The truth declared into a microphone, echoing against stone walls. I squeezed Theodore's arm, feeling his steady pulse under my hand. Pride radiated from him, strong enough to drown out everything else. Behind me, I knew Donald was sinking deeper into that pew, his chest tight with regret, his reputation unraveling in real time. Olivia had wanted less spotlight on me. Instead, she had spotlighted every fracture in our family. The aisle wasn't just a walk anymore. It was justice. And by the time we reached the altar, the verdict was sealed. The reception hall glittered with chandeliers, silverware clinking, champagne fizzing in tall glasses. The Charlotte Country Club was dressed for perfection, white linens, roses the color of blush, a jazz trio sliding notes in the corner. It should have been all about love. But the real show was happening at the head table. Grandpa sat in the chair reserved for the father of the bride. His suit jacket stretched tight across his shoulders, but he looked like he'd been born for that seat. Guests lined up to shake his hand, clap his back, congratulate him. His grin never faded. Donald, he was 3 tables back, squeezed between Olivia and a group of cousins who avoided eye contact. The fall from head table to guest table was brutal, and everyone saw it. Every time I glanced his way, he looked smaller, like the walls were pressing in on him. Olivia kept her head down, stabbing at her salad as if she could puncture her own embarrassment. When the time came for speeches, I stood with the mic in hand, the whole room waiting. My dress shimmered under the lights, but my voice carried sharper than satin. I want to thank someone very special. I began, locking eyes on Grandpa, the man who raised me, believed in me, and showed me unconditional love. Grandpa, you've been my rock. Thank you for being the father I needed when I needed one most. The applause erupted like thunder. Guests wiped tears. Some stood to clap harder. Grandpa bowed his head slightly. Overcome, across the room, Donald sat stone-faced, blinking too fast, his jaw tight. Then the music shifted. The DJ announced the next tradition. Ladies and gentlemen, the father-daughter dance. He paused deliberately. Tonight, Charlotte dances with her grandfather, Theodore Hamilton, who proudly walked her down the aisle. Gasps, cheers, whistles. Grandpa rose, slower than he used to, but proud, steady. I took his hand, and we moved onto the floor. The jazz trio melted into a soft ballad. His steps were careful, measured, but his smile could have lit the whole hall. I leaned in and whispered, "You're stealing the show." He chuckled. "It's yours, sweetheart." Always was. Around us, people whispered, not about me, but about him, about how much he'd done, about how absent Donald had been. He's always been the real father, Aunt Helen declared loudly enough for half the room to hear. The words hung in the air like a final judgment. I caught Donald's face across the floor. He flinched, shoulders collapsing inward. Humiliation wasn't the word. It was deeper, rawer. For the first time, he looked like a man realizing the cost of his choices, measured not in money, but in love. Meanwhile, Olivia's face was frozen, the fake smile gone. She had wanted to bury me. Instead, she had dug their grave. Every tradition that night, cutting the cake, the toast, the spotlight, circled back to Grandpa, Guests toasted him. Old neighbors told stories about his devotion. My coworkers laughed about how he never missed a company picnic. Every moment widened the gap between the man at the head table and the one stranded among guests. Donald didn't just lose the aisle. He lost the room. The weeks after the wedding didn't bring relief for Donald. They brought consequences. Family calls slowed, then stopped. Invitations he used to get automatically, Thanksgiving dinners, summer cookouts. Birthdays never reached him. Word had traveled fast. He refused to walk his daughter down the aisle because his younger child felt jealous. Relatives shook their heads, muttered words like coward, favoritism, pathetic. He went from father of the bride to family disgrace in one afternoon. Olivia fared no better. She tried to spin the story, tried to paint me as vindictive, selfish, but no one bought it. The truth was too visible, too public. She had wanted the spotlight on herself. What she got was a spotlight on her manipulation. I stopped answering her calls. When we crossed paths at a cousin's baby shower 6 months later, she tried to hug me. I stepped back. You made your choice. I told her. She froze, then turned away. Our sisterhood cracked clean in half. Donald tried to apologize. Once, he called late at night, his voice raw. Charlotte, I made a terrible mistake. I should have been the one. I let Olivia talk me out of the most important moment I'll ever have with you. I let him speak. When he finished, I said only, yes, you did, then silence. Because sometimes there's nothing left to salvage. Meanwhile, Grandpa filled the void with ease. He became more than a stand-in. He became the family's anchor. Every holiday, he sat at the head of the table. Every milestone, my first child, my job promotion, our anniversaries, he was there, smiling, proud, the loudest clapper in every room. Photos of him walking me down the aisle became framed treasures on our mantle. Donald, he faded into the background of family life, a man still alive, but treated like a ghost. His absence from birthday parties, from Christmas mornings, from my kids' soccer games became the new normal. No one asked where he was. No one cared. Months later, flipping through my wedding album, I lingered on one photo. Grandpa and me, arm in arm, walking the aisle with sunlight pouring through stained glass. His eyes glowed. My smile was steady. Behind us, in the blurred background, Donald sat slumped in the third row, his face hollow, a man watching his own failure in real time, and it hit me. Revenge wasn't about cruelty. It wasn't about punishment. It was about truth, about honoring the love that had always been there, about finally choosing the parent who had chosen me all along. Sometimes losing a disappointing father isn't a tragedy. Sometimes it's freedom. And in that freedom, you finally see the people who truly deserve the title.